from Los Angeles, Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
With me, Cary Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
And it is Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We're going to have one of my favorite shows, possibly ever, certainly this year, coming up in just a few minutes because it's all about your future. Yep, your future, dead or alive, maybe quite literally. And I speak, of course, about politics, but politics have become quite literal lately. And we're going to get into that as we... Well, I guess we all ask each other, are we just a fine and jaded audience assembled here under the grand illusion that a democracy, a notion conceived by optimists and perpetuated by the guileless, is it true that we're currently told that our ancestors, my ancestors specifically, that is to say, some with greater foresight than others, well, they constructed this elaborate theater in which each of us wields the marvelous instrument of voting, a tool that is supposed to shape the destiny of our mighty republic. Yet here we are, teetering on the precipice, watching democracy dangle precariously like an overambitious acrobat with a penchant for theatrics. The argument for political change resonates with all of us, doesn't it? No matter how we vote. We observe daily as inequities persist, unabated voices muffled behind the din of cunningly engineered propaganda, and civil rights, once a solid foundation, now tremble under the weight of perfidious politics. Try that double alliteration on your own 10 times quickly. In this day and age, when cries for equality ring out like a cacophony, it becomes imperative that every citizen's utterance is not only acknowledged, but also recorded in the annals, or I guess the word is annals, of decision-making. Think about it. Our so-called democracy relies on what is humorously termed participation. Picture this act not as a gift, but as a duty, one that can challenge the banality of the status quo and demand governance that mirrors the diverse and exasperating complexion of our land. There is potential, yet I think, for the havoc of our political framework to be mitigated through relentless engagement on the part of you and me. That means suiting up and showing up by championing laws that enshrine and define our ceaseless right to vote, and by restructuring this game in a way that reveals its secrets to all. So we have to insist upon leaders who value fairness and justice and a governance inclusive of every stripe and persuasion. I don't care who and what you are. You know who and what you are. And by the way, you're the majority. Yep. The ones you're told are the majority are no longer that. That's the great lie. You see, the magic of change dwells in the untarnished sanctity of the vote itself. By voting, we reaffirm our allegiance to a system that ought to hold civil rights in highest regard. We pronounce our refusal to endure a regime that marginalizes and exploits. This journey, this uneasy march toward progress demands that every voice sing out. Every voice is cast with the conviction that it will topple the ailing structures of inequality and herald a fairer society. I know. It feels like we're endlessly gazing into the foggy stretches of tomorrow where the appetites of blowhards and puckfists gobble up common sense, where obese hucksters trick millions of our compatriots by appealing purely to their lowest appetites, politicians who declare this nation nothing more than a vile toilet, a garbage can filled with people with bad genes. And I don't mean blue jeans. And a master plan to cleanse the problem, all the while revealing that everything is for personal gain and exploit, that people are trash to be burnt and recycled at a profit. an overweight octogenarian clutching his withered stool like a tiny doorknob in despair, overtly fantasizing about the late Arnold Palmer's prodigious prong, likely poking and probing the prolaxed rectum of this hungry and libertine politician. His mail-order bride no longer provides arm candy. And if all we can do together is keep our textbooks from being printed in Russian, well, then this is going to be a worthy challenge for you and me. Enough, I say, because we're going to tenaciously pursue the advancements of civil rights while empowering every soul, no matter their story or origin. My ancestors, founding fathers, that is what they intended. That is what I will do today. That is what we will do today. That is what you listening, you watching will do today. And you can watch, by the way, by going to rethinkingheroes.com. You're going to be able to watch this video on every single streaming service, anything with a chip or a signal. Rethinkingheroes.com. Just click the link of your choice. Now, are we going to allow them to play down their part in this grand play of freedom, right? The other side, whatever that means, the ones that would wrench away from you your right to exist, your freedom, your self-determination, as my ancestors wrote in ink pen in a stylus on a piece of parchment? You're going to rise, you're going to declare, and above all, you're going to exercise your vote within collective grasp through this choir of voices, our voices. This is the might to perpetuate a democracy that doesn't merely survive but thrives, steering us toward an ever hopeful horizon of equity and enlightenment. Democracy is at a crossroads, and the path forward requires collective action. The very foundations of our democratic systems are under threat, and it's time to fortify them. This is not news to you, except if you haven't voted yet and you're thinking, oh, it doesn't matter. You will be to blame. We need better politicians. Yes, we all do. We need responsive, competent, and honest leaders who truly represent the people. Effective democracy hinges, doesn't it, on citizens' active participation. We deserve education, about to be taken away. We deserve critical thinking. That was made illegal years ago. Books banned in Florida, in Alabama, Mississippi. Why not across the rest of the country? It is on the way. Informed decision-making. That is what we need to safeguard our rights and freedoms. Voting is pivotal, and every voice matters. So coming up in a minute is an investigative, award-winning journalist, one you love, one whom you know. He's an author, he's a filmmaker whose name you will not only recognize, but he's also known throughout Europe and anywhere where the printed word is still considered vibrant. That would be most of the planet. But first, we're going to hear from a real president to tee up this show, the kind of president that was respected by hundreds of millions in this country, with a personal message for you and an invitation for you to dip more than your little toe into this next hour. I'm going to bring you the executive producer of what's coming up ahead, America's favorite president, Martin Sheen.
Hello, I'm Martin Sheen. Now, you may or may not be shocked to learn that there is a real threat to the 2024 election, but I can guarantee you will be shocked by the film you are about to see that exposes in no uncertain terms the full extent of that threat. The film is called Vigilantes Inc., and it follows the heroic investigative reporter Greg Palast as he uncovers a group of 40,000 MAGA volunteers whose efforts have already challenged the voting rights of 851,000 eligible voters with a goal of 2 million by November 5th. And nearly all of them are voters of color. Of course, all of this is just a new form of an old Jim Crow tactic, first used in 1946 by the Ku Klux Klan to deny ballots to black voters. Only this time, they are using AI tricks and disinformation to deny ballots to blacks, Hispanics, and Asian American citizens. There is so little time left before the election, so I urge you to get involved by joining this heroic effort to expose voter suppression by going to saveyourvote.org. And remember, one vote can change an election, and one heart with courage is a majority. Thanks again.
Yes, Martin's talking about all of our future and what we can do about it. And the same man who has taken it to the next level and brought us an extraordinary documentary, you're going to see the trailer for it shortly, is none other than BBC, Rolling Stone, and The Guardian's Greg Palast. His new documentary is called Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. It's narrated by Star Wars' Rosario Dawson, produced by West Wing's Martin Sheen, George DiCaprio, and Maria Florio, the Oscar-winning documentarian. You're going to learn that 40,000 self-complained vote fraud hunters are targeting vulnerable voters and have already disenfranchised 852,381, likely more, people now of color. I want to welcome to Rethinking Heroes investigative reporter, the great Greg Palast.
Okay, Palast Akbar, I guess, but I just thank you for that over-the-top introduction.
But not over the top. Not over the top. And I want to be clear. My passion is real. Your passion, having done all of this, is real too. But I am goddamn sick and tired of being stolen from, being lied to, being ripped off, and having my life threatened. I spent a lot of time in the Deep South, and these bastards are around the corner wielding AK-47s and threatening my vote. So this is real. This is not just me bringing on a guest. This is me bringing on an eyewitness who is brave enough to go out and photograph this so that millions of people can see what's actually going on. So I will just relax now and let you take over.
Okay, well, for those who know me, Greg Palast, I'm an investigative reporter. You can tell if you're watching on video, you can tell by the fedora. And I don't do much of the dangerous stuff. I leave that to my cameraman, Zach D. Roberts, and co-producer of the film Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. And that has just been made free for you to screen at no charge at saveyourvote.org or gregpalast.com. So I don't know if we want to play the sound from that trailer, Cary, or
yeah, let's do this.
Yeah,
Since we're live streaming video, so really watch the show is a great way to do it. You can listen in your car when you get to your destination, get out, turn on your phone, and you can continue on any streaming service so you don't miss a thing. And you can also see the excellent cinematography and watch what's going on simply by going to rethinkingheroes.com, where we will be doing a screening of this. And hopefully, if Greg has the bandwidth, we can maybe get a few minutes of Q&A down the road. And when you sign up for our free newsletter, we'll let you know the when and the where of that. Let's watch that trailer right now. This is the trailer for Vigilantes Inc. You'll get exactly what we're talking about.
You're telling me 2,600 miles away, 2 days for an election, that if I want to vote, all I have to do is show up and prove as an American citizen that I have the right to vote again?
Is this an attempt to remove a lot of Democrats, black people from voting to win the election?
I am far from that, sir, and you have crossed the line.
And today to come out and not be able to vote and no one can give you an explanation, like, it's extremely emotional and it bothers me. It bothers me to my core.
Okay. Now, that's the trailer to your movie. We see that, as you pointed out, we're looking at almost 1 million people of color having lost their votes. There's a reason that it's people of color. It's not just, let's just take theirs away because why not? No. There's a reason that it's people of color. Let's jump into that. What is that, Greg Palast?
Well, it's real simple. There's two reasons. One, voters of color, black people, Asian Americans, Hispanics are vulnerable voters. They don't have the political power. Remember during the 2000 race between Gore and Bush, all the discussion was on the butterfly ballot of Palm Beach. There was not one single report from Gadsden County where 700 black people lost their vote because they wrote in Al Gore's name instead of just clicking a box. So no one covers the suppression of the black vote, but God forbid you get rich white people lose their vote and everyone loses their mind. So number one, it's a vulnerable community. Second, Hispanics and now Asian Americans who used to vote Republican, they now vote as if they've turned black. So blacks, Hispanic, and also American natives, especially. These are vulnerable groups who are voters of color, and the color is blue. They're consistently Democratic voters. So if you're going to knock out voters, you take the vulnerable ones who are going to vote for your opponent. And instead of trying to convince people to vote for you, you go after them and rip the ballot out of their hands. Now, what you're watching in the film and what you heard in the trailer, you heard an African-American career military officer. He's 70 years old at the time. And he did not, as you heard, he did not get his ballot. So he calls up the voting office in Columbus, Georgia. This is Major Gamaliel Turner, one of America's, if you listen to Rosario Dawson, who narrates our film, he's one of America's top experts on warfare of the future. And this guy was assigned, he was in the Fort Benning area of Georgia, and all these soldiers were assigned to other bases. He was assigned to California. So the Republican officials, and we're not talking about the government, we're talking about individual self-appointed vote fraud hunting vigilantes. Those they challenged, one of them challenged his vote, and 4,000 others in the Fort Benning area. Almost all of these were African American soldiers whose votes were challenged because they were assigned to another military base. In the case of Gamaliel Turner, you just heard him say, so they tell him, well, no problem. Oh, Mr. Turner, because he didn't get his ballot. He says, where's my ballot? They said, oh, well, Mr. Turner, you've been challenged. He goes, what does that mean? I've been challenged. No problem. All you have to do is show up at our office, prove you're a citizen, prove you're still living, you still have a home here in Georgia, which he owns. And he says, so you're telling me 2,700 miles away that all I have to do is show up and prove I'm a citizen? Again, and when he means again, he's going back to the Jim Crow era. And he said, I know what this is. This is Jim Crow. It's just that it's now modernized.
Greg Palast,
Yeah.
There are going to be people that are 15, 20 that are streaming, listening to this digitally, watching it on video. Jim Crow is just a name. Maybe it's not good. Maybe it is. They don't know what Jim Crow is. Help us understand Jim Crow.
Jim Crow were the laws of segregation, which were officially banned in the United States in 1964 and 65, which stopped Black people from buying homes, casting votes, any type of official discrimination. And even though these are vigilantes, that is self-appointed vote blockers, and there's the person that took away the 4,000 soldiers' votes, this is not a government official, it's a party official. So Jim Crow, this is the return of those tactics from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, when Black people were lynched if they try to vote. It's the return of that, except now it's an electronic lynching, where these people are taking lists of names from a right-wing group in Texas and challenging thousands of voters at once. Now, the guy that challenged, if you were watching the film, you'll see a guy with a 6-gun. The guy that challenged Major Turner's vote, the guy who challenged him actually dresses like a vigilante. You'll see in the film Vigilantes Inc., which, by the way, again, you can stream for free at gregpalast.com, GregPalast, gregpalast.com. And you can stream it again. And that, by the way, that was made possible by George and Leonardo DiCaprio. Thank you. And so Turner was challenged by this guy who actually dresses like a vigilante, cowboy boots, cowboy hat, and, as you'll see in the film, a loaded pearl-handled 6-shooter in a holster. He really thinks he's Doc Holliday. He literally likes to portray the vigilante Doc Holliday. He says only killed a few Black people, so what's the big deal? He was actually a quite nice and classy guy. That's who challenged the Major. And now, at the beginning of that little clip from the trailer, you heard a woman screaming at me, "Get out of my house!" Because I asked her, "Are you blocking? Are you trying to block Black voters in your neighborhood from voting?" This woman, a white GOP official, and I'm not being partisan, there were 88 vote challengers in Georgia. Everyone is a white GOP Republican official. And she personally, are you ready for this, Cary? She personally challenged 32,132 voters. She challenged their right to vote. 32,000 of her neighbors, almost all of them. We went through the list. We called 800. Almost all of them were African-American, and a few young people, again, voters of young people in the Atlanta area, they're voters of color too, which is the color blue. So I show her a picture of one of her young black neighbors and say, "Do you recognize this woman?" "Oh, no." "Have you ever spoken to her or been to her house?" "Oh, no." And I said, "But you challenged her right to vote and 32,000 others." And she says to me, you'll see on camera, she says to me, "Oh, I can't call 32,000 people." But she could challenge the right to vote. And by the way, I'm not giving away much by saying she throws me out, and you'll see that her house is filled with ammo to the ceiling. This is not some freak in a shotgun shack. This is a woman in a Gone with the Wind mansion dressed to the nines. She's got all this ammo, and she's got a loaded AR-15 next to the door. She throws me out when I challenge the fact that she's going after her black neighbors, 32,000 of them. And my local camera crew, by the way, fled for its life. Thank you, Zach, for continuing to film. And then she starts swearing at me. I couldn't use all of her language in the film, otherwise I'd lose my PG rating.
I'm going to jump in for a second because the content is X-rated. The fact that this is happening, and I realize that our audience is in Hollywood and Los Angeles, so for them hearing these sort of antebellum houses and shotguns and rebel flags, it's just sort of like a Netflix special. This is the real United States when you get 1,000 miles out of Los Angeles. This is what half of the United States e pluribus unum currently looks like. This is the reality. Governors like DeSantis and others are real people, and they have millions of followers who follow their laws without any critical thought, without examining whether it's just or not. It's just more comfortable to be able to take what you want, to live in the limbic region of your brain, the reptile part, eat, have sex, grab, whatever you want, and as much as you want. No consequences. When we continue in just a moment with Greg Palast, Rolling Stone, Guardian, BBC, author of the New York Times bestsellers Armed Madhouse, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, and the book and documentary The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, we're going to be looking at this latest film, Vigilantes Inc., America's new suppression hitmen. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what his documentary can do to stop some of this madness and the behind the scenes of how we got there at this point. We're going to take a pause for just a moment. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Don't forget to get our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com, where you can also watch the live video of this program and catch archives and everything else. And also know that when you do get our free newsletter, you're going to be able to get everything with it, including we're going to do a screening of this film. And if we're lucky and there's bandwidth, we're going to be able to do a Q&A with Greg Palast down the road. But you're going to find out the when and where as we continue here on Rethinking Heroes.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. rethinkingheroes.com.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. rethinkingheroes.com.
folks, the people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
Well, there it is. What more does one need to say to make any of this incredible? We're talking right now to Greg Palast, Rolling Stone, Guardian, BBC, author of the New York Times bestsellers Armed Madhouse, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, and the book and documentary, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. We're looking at his latest film, Vigilantes Inc., America's new vote suppression hitmen, and he's currently working on a new documentary, yet another one called Long Knife, exposing the Koch brothers' theft of Osage oil, and that's going to be released next year. Greg Palast, we're talking about what is going on with voting, what is happening currently, and then as we look in the rearview mirror, some people will be tuning into this maybe 2 months from now, looking back and wondering, how did it happen that way? We don't know what that way, well, by then everyone will know what that way means, but we've already been told there will be challenges to this, that a lot of pre-installed judges are already prepared to do the work of one side or the other. What can your film do to slow down these MAGA nauts, as you call them, like MAGA nauts, astronauts? It's a brilliant word.
Brilliant or not, it's dangerous. One thing we've done, by the way, one other way to watch Vigilantes Inc. for free is to go to our site, Save Your Vote, not Save Cary's vote or Greg's vote, Save Your Vote.
But save my vote while you're at it.
Yeah,
Really,
okay,
good idea.
Good idea. SaveYourVote.org, where you can also look up your registration. 21 states allow you to register on election day, and that includes the swing states. Certainly in California, by the way, you can register on the day. So if your name's missing, you're challenged, say, give me a new registration form. I'll just re-register right here. Don't argue with them. Do not take a provisional ballot. Do not take a provisional ballot, but do re-register if you're in California, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, or North Carolina, among the 21 states that have same-day re-registration. So if you're challenged, re-register on the
and Greg
spot.
Palast, we should point out why you say do not take a provisional ballot. So we remember back in the Bernie days, I took a provisional ballot because I'm an independent, because that's the reasonable way for me to take a middle path. And my provisional ballot was tossed in the garbage can because apparently under the law, it actually does not need to be counted legally.
Right. Yes. So we won the right to provisional ballots after tens of thousands of Black people were illegally removed from the voter rolls. That's a story I busted for The Guardian. But we got these provisional ballots, but we never got the right to have them counted. So just so you know, in the last presidential election, 10 million people were shunted to provisional ballots. And of those, 2.7 million ballots were rejected, thrown in the garbage can, just like your ballot, Cary. And so don't take what I call a placebo ballot. These provisional ballots, they make you think you voted, but you haven't. They're placebo ballots. Don't take them. So that's one of the reasons I'm warning you. If you go to the site SaveYourVote.org, you're going to stream the film Vigilantes Inc. gratis, but you're also going to check your registration, and you're going to read how you protect yourself from these vigilante vote rustlers. So that's all at the website, but it's also in the film. And like you said, with the new MAGA nauts, I'm speaking to you from Atlanta, Georgia, ground zero of vote suppression and also voter violence of these vigilantes. As you'll see in the film, they get violent. I go to Arizona. These guys are dressed as RoboCops with AR-15s over their shoulder. The 3%ers have ammo clips taped to their chest. And it's open carry state. So these RoboCops, these vigilantes, are standing next to ballot boxes in Hispanic neighborhoods. You'll see this. They're even using drones to intimidate people. You go to drop your ballot in the box, and a drone comes down into your face. So it's scaring people who are bringing their families to drop off their ballots, and they know exactly what they're doing. It's getting violent. And in fact, in the film, we have another case where we have vigilantes going after the supervisor of Houston, which is Harris County, Rodney Ellis, the first Black man elected Harris Houston commissioner. And they claimed he forged 750,000 ballots personally. so that he was about to send, and so they literally, these armed vigilantes surrounded his house. Then they saw a guy in an air conditioner truck. You'll see this in the film. They saw a guy with an air conditioner truck. They said, "Oh, the ballots must be in there." They ran the guy off the road, put a gun to his head, and said, "Show us the ballots." He opens up the back. It's air conditioning parts. Well, here's the thing. These weren't like lone crazies. These were detectives paid $250,000 each by a right-wing billionaire who hired 50 of these vigilante detectives with guns to intimidate voters of color and have their weapons out at these polling stations.
You're saying, Greg Palast, right now that you're in Ground Zero, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also in the Deep South today. So both of us at least are enjoying pleasant weather. But that's the only pleasant part about it. Georgia is a vitally important state, having brought multiple lawsuits from Donald Trump's 2020 attempted coup. What's the real motive behind Brian Kemp's vigilante vote challengers targeting hundreds of thousands of Georgians?
Well, there's this myth that Brian Kemp, the Republican governor of Georgia, is anti-Trump because Trump has previously attacked him. Now they're going steady. They've kissed and made up. And Brian Kemp, who wants to be the next president, so he has mounted these. He has been the promoter through new laws of these vigilante voter challenges. Brian Kemp was Secretary of State in charge of the voting. Now, I've covered this beef for 25 years. Racist vote attackers like Cary Harrison out of Florida, Ken Blackwell out of Ohio. I can tell you right now that I don't care what MSNBC says. Brian Kemp is the most racist vote suppressing official I've run into in 25 years on this beat for Democracy Now!, BBC, Guardian, and Rolling Stone. I've never seen anything like it. This guy keeps coming up with new ways to remove black voters from the voter rolls because this is quickly, right now it's a 50-50 minority white state. It's quickly becoming minority majority. A guy like Brian Kemp could never get elected if he didn't cheat. There's no way. I watch it, and you'll see in the film, that was one of the other things in the trailer. You heard this woman crying. To come out here and not be able to vote, it hurts. Well, her grandmother, 92 years old, and you will see her grandmother in the film being thrown out of a polling station. I didn't plan this. I was just happened to be at the polling station when this 92-year-old black woman was thrown out of the polling station saying a place she had voted for 50 years in a row. And they said, "No, you don't have the right to vote here anymore. You don't live in Georgia." So I went to the house that they said she didn't live in. And there on the wall was a picture of her having dinner at the house they said she didn't live in with Martin Luther King Jr., who's her cousin. So if they can knock off, and you will see them throw out one black person after another on camera in Atlanta. This is what's going on. This is what's happening now. And Brian Kemp just removed another 200,000 voters from the voter rolls. This is dangerous, ugly. I've been all around the world as you have, Cary. You don't see this where they purge hundreds of thousands of voters.
You don't
in
see
a state
where something as big as the New York Times can't see it or chooses not to, where CBS Evening News, where David Muir, it's just not a very interesting story. However, the Kardashians bought a new bracelet. I mean, we're in a world of hell here of conflicted realities, and what's important is not discussed, and it's only everything. This is an existential moment, and Brian Kemp, as you point out, has this ancestral wealth built on slavery, so he's no foreigner to the idea of having an allergy toward the blackamoor.
Well, let me explain too. As you had mentioned earlier in the program, there is this crusade against what these GOP governors like Brian Kemp of Georgia and DeSantis of Florida and Abbott of Texas, and that they call critical race theory, that we have to ban it from the schools. But since critical race theory is taught in no high school in the United States, or even at the college level, it's just for law schools. But they say you can't. So Georgia, Florida, and Texas have all passed laws that they call anti-divisiveness laws. What that means and I can't make this up, you as a teacher in Georgia or Texas or Florida can lose your license to teach if you say something in class that any one student or their parents, all you need is one student to complain or one parent to complain that you're teaching a divisive concept which makes white people feel bad about their race. Now, here's the problem. You can't teach about slavery. You can't teach about Reconstruction. You can't teach about the Civil Rights era because God forbid someone would say, oh no, that makes me feel bad. Well, maybe you ought to feel bad. And here's the other problem. So what I show in our film is that Brian Kemp, his family was the one that first brought enslaved Africans into the Deep South, the Georgia Territory, which at that time was almost the entire Deep South, just before the American Revolution. Brian Kemp's family got a special dispensation from George III. Remember that scamp that we got rid of in the Revolution? And one of the things that they got from the king before the Revolution was the right to bring in Africans, because believe it or not, in the Deep South in the United States, it was against the law to own another human being. It was against slavery, was against the law in the Deep South until Brian Kemp's family, which used to be called the Habershams. I was looking at Wikipedia. They said, oh, they just disappeared. No, they didn't. They changed their name to Kemp. It's Brian Kemp's family that brought slavery into Georgia. But here's the thing. It's not, I can't blame Kemp for that. What I can blame him for, and what he is responsible for, is that they are banning books that mention that Brian Kemp's family brought in slaves. And his cousin is fuming because she said, we have to admit in our family that we got our millions literally off the backs, the whipped backs of black people. And we have to acknowledge it. And he will not. So you don't get history because those who grabbed that wealth literally off the blood and backs of black people don't want you to know about it. And by the way, that includes Governor Abbott's family of Texas, who literally helped found a town called Whiteville. I'm not making it up. So because where blacks were not allowed to even step foot.
Right. And we have sundown towns and things that have long left the American psyche and memory. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com. And we're going to do a screening of Greg Palast's film, the one that we're talking about right now, Vigilantes Inc., America's new Vote Suppression Hitmen. And if we're lucky and there's some bandwidth for Greg, we'll do a little Q&A afterwards. We are talking to Greg Palast, Rolling Stone, Guardian, BBC author of the New York Times bestseller, Armed Madhouse, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, and the book and documentary, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. We're looking at his latest film, Vigilantes Inc. I'm a genetic pervert in that I have on my father's side founding fathers as ancestors. On my mother's side, I have Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator. I'm from Illinois originally, so there it is. Plus also the luxury of Benedict Arnold on my mother's side. So I've got it all going on. And I do feel the need to talk about slavery. I do feel the need to acknowledge what has gone on. And I do see the effects of book banning. We are idiotized by knuckle-walking Hispidolites now, by single-celled organisms in human bodies walking around thinking they're doing the Lord's work, even though they don't know what the Lord is. The Lord they think is wearing golf pants. And this is quite problematic. We're going to pause for a second and then take some calls at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. We want you to be able to chime in and ask some questions here and be involved and be participatory in this, your democracy. This show allows you to actually call in. I know it's rare, but we actually do that here at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Before we do that, Greg, let's take a look at an Instagram clip. This is in portrait mode. So if you're watching it on video by going to rethinkingheroes.com, you'll see it'll fit your phone quite perfectly. What was going on in this scene as we set it up?
This is Greg Palast in a sea of MAGA. I'm here at the Trump rally in Duluth, Georgia. Now, if they don't get their man, they've got their guns, and they're ready to use them.
Did Trump lose or win Georgia in 2020?
Trump didn't lose anything in 2020. Nothing.
Why?
They cheated. They cheated.
How'd they cheat?
There was bushels and baskets full and carloads of votes that came in the middle of the night from under the tables when no one was looking, when the building was closed.
If the Democrats do somehow take Georgia and Arizona and declare victory, is there going to be an uprising? What do you think will happen?
It's already been almost established with the 3%ers who are protectors of our nation as far as militia, not necessarily military, but just we, literally what you just said, we the people are going to come together and there's going to be a revolution.
Well,
yeah,
there's going to be a revolution. Tell us about that. You were there.
Yes. So I'm at the Trump rally, and a huge percentage of the people there were wearing these AR-15 T-shirts. And of course, they have pictures of Trump with his AR-15 T-shirts. And by the way, they always show him with his shirt open, this buff guy with these big muscles and this six-pack abs, even though the guy up on stage that they're looking at is clearly bodied by McDonald's. But that doesn't matter. So, but what does matter, I'm laughing, but here's the problem. As you heard from one guy there, they believe that the last election was stolen, doesn't matter the evidence, and they are absolutely convinced that Kamala Harris takes Georgia and thereby would probably take the White House, that there will be a revolutionary, the 3%ers, and if you're looking at the screen, these are guys with armed to the teeth, and they are ready to start shooting. And he also added, which you didn't hear in the clip, he said, look, we're going to win. There's going to be a civil war if Harris is declared victor. There's going to be a civil war, and we're going to win because there's more of us than them, meaning Harris supporters. And so the direct, absolute, right on the table, in your face threat of violence. I mean, and shooting violence. We're not just talking about making noise in the street. These guys are ready for bloodshed. So I'm very, very concerned. It's one of the things. So that clip came, you go to gregpalast.com or Greg_Palast on X. But what I'd really like you to do is catch the film for free. Go to gregpalast.com or otherwise saveyourvote.org. It's very, very important.
We're also going to do a special screening for everyone right here on Rethinking Heroes, and we're hoping that you have the bandwidth to come on and do some light Q&A for a handful of minutes afterwards. We want to be able to give people some direct love here on Rethinking Heroes. Coming up, we're going to be taking your calls at 818-985-KPFK. Talk to Greg Palast, ask some of these questions. We've heard not only from the candidate running for president on one of the sides that there will be a civil war. There will be brutal punishments on day one. We will be executing a authoritarian government. We will be opening up 1,000 new concentration camps. We know the Project 2025. It's some 900 pages will be enacted. If you are gay, lesbian, black, immigrant, even if you're a child of an immigrant like Donald J. Trump, he will get an exception, trust me. But if your name ends with a vowel, you may be nervous. Maybe you're not nervous. Maybe you have a lot of money, but maybe your parents' last name that ends with a vowel ought to be somewhat nervous. This is real stuff. I want to get your impressions and your thoughts on that as we continue here on Rethinking Heroes. Don't forget, you can watch the live video streaming right now on everything from Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, the whole soup, cat, and pizzas, simply by going to rethinkingheroes.com and clicking the link of your choice. Back in a sec.
We are in complete control. We are
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. rethinkingheroes.com.
listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, RethinkingHeroes.com, where when you get your free newsletter, we're going to give you a time and a date for a special screening of Vigilantes Inc. And if we're lucky and Greg has some extra bandwidth, we could do a little Q&A at the end. Don't forget, we are live streaming video on absolutely every single service. Simply go to RethinkingHeroes.com and pick the link of your choice. And so when you drive, the average drive time is about 15 minutes. When you get to your destination, you no longer have to turn off the radio or sit there and get in trouble for being late to work. Take your phone with you and keep on watching. The brilliance of modern technology. We've opened up the phones at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, as we talk to Greg Palast, Rolling Stone, Guardian, BBC, author of the New York Times bestseller Armed Madhouse, Billionaires and Ballots, and the book and documentary, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, looking at his latest film, Vigilantes Inc., America's new vote suppression hitman, and looking at the idea of an unfortunate coup. Let's jump first to, let's see who we've got queued up. Let's go to Harold in Redlands. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hey, Harold.
Yes, your guest today, I bought his book from KPFK, and his book was excellent, and his movie's even better. But my question to him is, how do you explain Kamala Harris? She didn't win the U.S. Senate seat.
Well, you mean she didn't win her presidential nomination through the primary process. That's true. Well, I have no, you know what? I'm nonpartisan. I have no opinion about candidates. I just don't. What I believe is, look, you can get my film, stream my film for no cost at gregpalast.com, GregPalast. And I don't have a partisan opinion about any of these candidates. All I believe is that the voters, not the vigilantes, should pick our next president. If, whatever people think of Kamala Harris or Agent Orange or anyone else, it's I don't care. I want you to just vote and have the right to your vote.
It's interesting. If it were Donald Trump versus, say, Arnold Palmer, someone whom he would wish to fillet and has told us as much, fantasizing in dark rooms in the perverse recesses of his own mind, the great girthy proboscis swinging from another golf pro. We know this is just a proxy for a man who has a toadstool and wants everyone to think that he's a manly man. It's a bad syllogism. It's a crooked syllogism, just like this whole election, which is a golf pro like Arnold Palmer is well endowed. I also play golf. Therefore, I am well endowed. Unfortunately, his followers don't see it. I see it as a wretched perversion. But if it were Arnold Palmer, another white man versus Donald Trump, it really would be a tight election of sorts. But it's a woman, not only a woman. Well, it's a woman of color. Double jeopardy. That's really the problem. That's why people are going, well, Kamala. I mean, what is a Kamala? What is she? Have you listened to her talk? I'm not saying you agree with everything, but this is not some idiot here. This is a well-crafted product. Now, agreed. Sure, there was no primary. Wouldn't we have loved to have seen all kinds of challengers rise up? Sure. But you and I are not in charge of that unfortunate party, nor are we in charge of the other unfortunate party. But we have a woman. We have a chance now to break a glass ceiling and allow women who have lost the right to their agency over their own bodies now under this particular political aggression, a chance for them to recapture that power over their own bodies. 61% of the human population, and a person of color. Once again, it's kind of a big deal. Or we can have Project 2025. All of them go away, including probably you. Because every piece of porn you have ever downloaded in your life, every text message is kept in a giant archive, and it will be actionable according to Project 2025. They will go back in time and you will become an enemy of the state and you will be disappeared. Oh, and J.D. Vance will take away the right to run a business on a Sunday. All businesses will be closed. All of them because of his interpretation of the Bible. Do you know what that will do to the economy? This is just on a good day. This is on a Thursday. So let's think about what's really at stake. Phone lines are open to you at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. You can see I'm a little wound up today. Why? Because it's everything. This is not just the way it was 4 years ago. We said it was everything, or 4 years before that, we said it was everything. What's on the line now is literally your right to step on the sidewalk legally, for you to be who you are legally and survive it. It is the most unbelievable thing. And Greg, before we go to another call, let's talk about what this revolution might look like. You having talked to many of these 3%ers and others who are telling you, oh yeah, we're ready to go.
Well, that's the dangerous thing. As we show in the film Vigilantes Inc., we show that the vigilantes are not only challenging voters, they're threatening them with weapons. This is the new ugly thing. And they are convinced, you have to understand, when you go to the MAGA rallies, they are absolutely convinced that if Harris wins, and this is the line I got again, if she wins, they're cheating. And they've always been cheating. And understand the reason why they feel that they are justified in a violent attack is that they believe that they have been under violent attack. I spoke to the woman who was sitting next to Bobby Kennedy and behind Trump when he was shot in the ear. And her statement was, well, clearly the Biden administration was in on it. She called them the three-letter agencies, CIA and FBI. So they killed Kennedy, which is, by the way, a matter of faith among the MAGA knots. They killed Kennedy. They killed RFK. They tried to kill Reagan. And now they try to kill Trump. So if they're using guns, we can use guns. Well, I don't know. Take a look at the film. It's frightening. I mean, we shouldn't dismiss it.
And we won't. Let's go to Dr. Louise here in California. You're on Rethinking Heroes. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, I'm listening to the radio and I am perplexed and I am perhaps scared of what's happening in America.
So what is your question?
Okay. No, it's not a question. It's my comment that as a woman, and I am Latina from Puerto Rico, this is an amazing story of the Vigilantes, the movie and everything else. My question is, are we going to let this...
I haven't had to say it in 10 years since the days of AM radio, but if you could please turn down your radio. Please turn down your radio. It is so old school and legacy. Thank you.
Okay. Are we going to let this horrible secret happen in America after all these years? That's my question.
Are we going to let it happen? Well, that would be the bliss of ignorance. That would be people who don't know what's going on. Happily, we are doing our part right now, and you are participating in letting people know what's going on. The question that I don't know that Greg can answer, I cannot answer it either, is what do we actually do? I think there are legal processes, but they tend to come way after the fact to cure a problem that may have metastasized so badly that it's too big to handle. I don't know, Greg, what are you hearing from people who don't want to see it turn out this way? What are we prepared to do? Are we?
Well, if you go to you can stream again Vigilantes Inc. at my site, gregpalast.com, GREGPALAST. The reason I say that is that you'll have on camera Gerald Griggs, the president of the NAACP of Georgia. You will have some of the top voting rights people explain to you that we have been in court. Now you have to understand, I don't just make movies and make movements. I've been an expert witness in court to try to stop, and we have successfully stopped some of these vote snatching Jim Crow tactics aimed at voters of color. There was for example, if you're Hispanic, one of the most dangerous programs was called interstate cross-check where they would say, okay, Jose Garcia voted in Texas and Jose Garcia voted in Georgia. And they'll say, that's the same guy, Jose Garcia. And they'll say, well, that's just a common name. Not if you're a Republican, it's not a common name. Most Jose Garcias are going to vote Democratic. So there are 800,000 people with the last name Garcia in America. You're always going to find matches. And they were using this to say these Jose Garcia and Cristina Hernandez are voting in several states, the same voter, even though, by the way, the middle names don't match. These are the games that they play. And we were able to defeat this by doing exposés on it, from Democracy Now! To The Guardian, but also we went into court and were able to shut these Jim Crow and Jose Crow games down. So there are steps we can take, but I keep telling you, the first place, begin with saving your own vote. So you go to saveyourvote.org, saveyourvote.org. Don't expect anyone else to do it. Save your vote and stream the film gratis, and to check your registration and follow the steps on how to protect your vote. We even have the 800 numbers for the flying teams of lawyers if you're running into trouble.
All right, this is good to know, and that is really all we can do right now, but it is a lot to be able to have a toll-free number, to be able to call, to be able to report what's going on. And there are, you may have had a bad experience with a lawyer, but when you have one on your side who's smart, it's very helpful. And there's a ton we can do. The more of us that know about what's going on, the more we can slow down a horrible machine. So it is, as we end this show here, because we're regrettably out of time, it is up to each of us to find a way to communicate with our fellows. Some people just literally react by emotional response. If you get them emotionally involved, they may respond. Others might prefer the intellectual approach. You have to figure out how you can message and bring to light this kind of awareness, because it really is everything. Whether it's today, a month from now, a year from now, this is not going to go away. Geopolitics is on fire right now, and we're seeing the kind of trend that only can be stopped by awareness and some level of, let's just say, polite resistance. And we'll leave it at that. We don't have time for your call, Mike and John and Sam and Sally and Linda. I apologize. Let's bring you on next week, please, if you don't mind terribly much. I want to thank you, Greg Palast, for having come on today. Greg Palast, Rolling Stone, Guardian, BBC, author of the New York Times bestsellers, Armed Madhouse, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, and the book and documentary, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. We're looking at his latest film, Vigilantes Inc., America's new vote suppression hitmen, and he's currently working on even another documentary called Long Knife, exposing the Koch brothers' theft of Osage oil, to be released in 2025. And don't forget, you can go to rethinkingheroes.com. Get our free newsletter. We're going to have a special screening of Greg's film, which is available through gregpalast.com as well. And if we're lucky and he has the bandwidth, we'll do a little Q&A. Again, thank you, Greg, very much for coming on today.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And I will be there to answer your questions. So we're not done with this, and it won't be over on Tuesday. Believe me, it won't even be close to over on Tuesday.
Yes, we're going to bring a bunch of fat ladies on to sing. So this is going to keep going on whether we like it or not. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Regrettably out of time, but I very much look forward to seeing you next week. And don't forget, you can get a copy of this and all archives simply by going to rethinkingheroes.com. And hey, good luck to all of us, okay? I'll see you later.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. Rethinkingheroes.com.